During the spring semester of 2008, 5 Frostburg State University students familiarized themselves with the Maryland maple sugar industry. Using techniques such as surveys, interviews, and field trips to sugar camps, the Frostburg State University students were able to examine the structure and tradition of one of Maryland's oldest agricultural commodity industries. By examining production methods, distribution, and market trends, students were able to propose insights promoting an increase of local awareness and distribution. The following images are the digital observations of the research.
Temperature 26 at night, 45 in the day. Yesterday was 2-1. However, everything has been frozen up the whole week and it thawed things out for it. These trees here on the home, we gathered 2 times yesterday.
You gathered what?
We gathered 2 times yesterday.
All right.
Which they produced yesterday, roughly 4 gallons per tap. If you get 15 gallons per tap in a year, you figure you had a good year. 15 gallons of sap should boil down, if you have 2% water, to a little better than a quart of maple syrup. So in this area, we figure if we get a quart of syrup per tap hole, we're doing real well. This is your main thing, is a good, clean hole. That's how deep we go in. This is a stop in the tree, right here. And this design tapper does a real fine job. Trees are different. You can see more with these trees at home here that's on buckets than you can the tubing. You know, you don't know what they're doing. You see it coming through the line, but you don't know what they're doing per tree. That tree right up there on the very end. Yep. Okay, that is probably the best tree.
It's good. It's a good looking tree.
It's a beautiful tree.
It is. Yeah, it's got a good shape too.
It's got a beautiful tree. And it just outproduces any. We started tapping tubing on the 2nd day of February. All right, on the 9th day, I started drilling here. On this mountain here, which is tapped, there, and on the other side, my one nephew has, he just finished tapping there Saturday, but it's North Slope tree a little later. That's one advantage we have, the different soils and the different climates. This is our warmest trees right here. We have trees in Wellersburg. We have trees at the top of Wellersburg Mountain. And some of the best syrup is made in this area. And this is all due to our tree and our soil.
Right.
Soil has a big thing on sugar trees. That one tree, the one we're tapping now, there's one hollow up there. It's called Gomer Hollow. And there's 4,500 taps all on pipeline. Wow. And the soil is real red. You don't make light syrup out of red soil, which 10 years ago was a no-no because no one wanted dark syrup. Everyone wanted fancy syrup. That's all you heard. Big market now is your darker syrup, the B-grade syrup. There's a cleanse that they do with it now. You use B-grade syrup, cayenne pepper, lemon juice. People live off of this for a week to 10 days. Oh, it'll take weight off of you if you need to lose some. And it gives you extreme amount of energy, plus cleanses your system. Lemon juice and maple syrup. Right now, the dark grade syrups in the United States and Canada, they're gone. There is none. The Asians last year started buying a lot of maple syrup, Asia and Japan. Japan is a great user of maple syrup. England with Great Britain, Great Union. Farmers that make syrup. 3-4 years ago, they would put on a quota system. They so much amount of syrup, and then they were supposed to quit. I don't blame them, you know. And what happened? They black marketed the syrup, and but now the Federation, they call it the bank. They're out of syrup. They are empty.
Where's that?
In Canada.
Okay.
See, in Quebec. Province of Quebec produces more maple syrup than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, they go out at $100,000 bush. And the reason being, I got some friends in Canada. I wondered, why do you put them on a federation? Or why do you put them on a quota? And the thing wasn't to kick the little farmer. They didn't want to bother him too bad. It's a tax write. Right there, too. Let's go. There's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
There's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, dark side of the tree. It dropped all night, and see, that side has dropped out. It was warmer, the sun was against it. It outperformed yesterday. Now, see what's happening today? This one thawed out, and it's going to change.
All right.
Trees are out here, they're under enough stress as it is. And a tree under stress will produce sweeter sap than a tree that's healthy. This is a refractometer. We spray.
Okay. Is that
Now you pass that around and look at it. You can see the tree. You might have to adjust it to your eye. Okay. In the 80s, if everyone would have sprayed, it's a little expensive. However, when you tap a tree, cold weather really doesn't hurt. Last year, as an example, we were doing boom boom. I mean boom boom. We hauled more water in that 1 week than we had ever hauled. We was finishing gathering some buckets on Monday. The forecast called for 80-degree temperature on Tuesday. It did. It was 80, 60 at night. 80, 60 at night. This was right before Easter last year. Then the temperature got cold. By Friday, it was 12 degrees. All right. We'd laid all the lines out of the tanks and everything, and anticipating when we got some fresh, it would go. Well, the temperature got right again. First part of the Palm Sunday, the temperature got right. All right, we laid the lines back in the tanks. Those trees never come back. They quit right now. That warm weather, what had happened? The timber warmed up. And in this tree, when you drill in there that short distance, there's little celery. Celery is a good example where you see those little tubes that runs all up. All right, they heal.
What are these? Is this stuff
That's your
started?
woodpecker.
Oh, it's a woodpecker. All right. All right.
It's not your.
When it gets warm enough in late part of the season, you can see your sweetest trees because the honeybees will be ready to come in. 1,500 gallons.
1,500 gallons makes 130-gallon tank of syrup.
Something like that. The public, you have to have something that Susie Homemaker associates. When you look at a banana, it's got to be yellow, an orange corner. Okay, they're used to seeing log cabin syrup. It's dark in color. And then, Mrs. Butterworth. So when you think syrup, they think dark. If you set a bottle of nice, clear, fancy syrup, which is just sweet, makes wonderful candies, creams, she wouldn't mind. She wouldn't mind. It's just that way.
Here, Frostburg students sample water before the evaporation process. Pure, sweet maple sap. The next scenes are in the evaporator room. Unfortunately, the sound was overwhelming to the camera.
Into this part, this is your syrup department. Right here. Alright. We're going to take syrup. Right in there, this probe is into the evaporator. The temperature of that syrup in there is 215.9. Alright, today he's got it that it's syrup. Syrup is 7 degrees above the boiling point of water. Alright, so today, and each day it is different due to your barometric pressure. Today it's at 218.4 is when that'll take syrup into the barrel. It'll kick off, we'll watch it a while. That's the load hydrometer there that we double check. Just a double check. There's a probe right here that we get to the surface part. And it all that's right here. That's they were 194 whole. This year, since the price of steel went up, they're 284. Shoot. That would be fancy. That would be grade A medium. That would be grade A dark amber. This would be called B grade. Alright, anything darker than this is considered a commercial grade. Niter,
Niger,
niter,
Niger,
niter,
Niger,
niter,
Niger,
niter.
Niger,
Take out most of your, it takes out sugar sand, which is niter. You can't see it. You can't see it. It's a coating that your sugar absorbs through the root. Some years, we sugar makers call it sugar sand. Proper name, niter. Well, I can't explain it.
I don't.
I can't explain it.
It's one of those
But it's
magic
it's
wonders.
in,
I don't.
it's called niter, sugar sand.
Yeah.
Here's our maple sugar.
Right.
That was made out of light amber syrup.
It's just the sugar from it?
Here, Rocky Shinholtz explains the vacuum system and how his sap flows into his processing machinery. The modern sugar maker sure does have it easier than the old-fashioned traditional sugar maker. What would you rather do? Haul buckets? Or hook tubes up to your trees and run them downhill into a collecting tank? Rocky Shinholtz leads Frostburg students up to the tap line. Here, the students will see the vacuum system in operation firsthand.
So how many
Yeah, 2 ladders. There's probably like hole wise, I'm gonna say rough guesstimate right here. Just this side here. There's another main one. Like I got one almost halfway. That side in there, it's really. I'm not. You familiar with one second? Mostly maple. Now that side of the mountain over there, that's like, it's unbelievable. It's a playhouse area because, I mean, I looked up there at the ad this year and I didn't even know where to start at. I come up through there and I found a grove of maple and Leo told me, see, Curtis used to have like 5,000 buckets up there. He got a tractor, he'd hired his own crew. He had a wash machine. This is how wild it is. He had that black tubing up on the tip top of the mountain. He had an old ringer washer, lowered them. And the drain on the bottom of it, he had it plumbed into there. So he took his tank instead of saving time and money, really. Instead of coming down the camp, dropping every load off, he'd open the valve up there and dump it right into the ringer washer and get right out to the bottom, straight down to his camp, and he'd have someone here pulling. I wish I could have met that guy because he's like, I mean, he was just unbelievable. If he would see this operation now, he'd never be the same. I mean, just buckets you got to go every single day, and you got to dump them hand. You know, these things here ain't pretty well.
Yeah, pretty much hands off.
Yeah, pretty well go through. The thing I like about this here, instead of a gravity flow, if you had a leak, say in the line, you go up through there, it would hiss like a snake. So like regular gravity, you wouldn't hear it. I mean, you might see it if you're looking through the woods, you'll see it dripping, you might catch it. But if you got a leak in this woods here, believe me, you hear it. You can just walk up through there and hear it, and you're just like, you think you're hallucinating because you're just like, man, there's a leak. And then you sit there a second, you hear another leak, you're like, oh shoot. You go over there, you fix this leak, then you go over and fix that one, you go further, another leak, and another leak. You're like, holy smokes.
And what makes them leak?
What makes them leak?
Yeah.
Squirrels, raccoons, sometimes bears. It's just different. I
chew
think- Yeah, they'll chew the crap out of them. Yeah. See, the other ones are easy to fix. Like last year, I don't know why the squirrel would even choose to chew on it, but up on top, that 6-way there on top, they decided to chew on that there. So I had to take that 4-wheeler, bring it over here, back it up, stand on my box, and cut it, and put the line back on. I'm telling you, them squirrels, they're like saboteurs. So then when it thaws out, then it just opens up. Now, on the flat ground, everybody, that's why you see everybody using buckets like down there at the farm. And then I pay a quarter a hole for every hole I drill.
Okay.
Quarter a hole.
Yeah, quarter a hole.
Who gets that money?
The landowner.
Landowner?
Yeah.
All right.
See, I rent the ground, I pay him a quarter a hole. Then Zelda, I pay her electric bill for February and March. And then I pay her, and I pay him in checks, and she separates it to her kids.
I don't know.
All right.
She just
Is that the going rate, a quarter a hole
Yeah.
when you're leasing land?
Yep.
50 gallons out of tree.
How many holes do you have?
I have, I'm gonna say right here, between, I'd say, rough guess, between 28 to 3,000. And up the farm, I got probably, I'd say around 2,000, somewhere around there, maybe over. I'd say I got over 5,000. The main thing I have to pay a quarter hole is for here, but up the farm, that's Uncle Leo's ground. So he lets me do it. I just sell the water and stuff to him. And I get that up there for free, but I got to invest my, pay my labor, and time, and my tubing. Tubing ain't cheap. Mainline ain't cheap. That tubing here, it's like $80 a roll now, they say. That's supposed to be just for drop spouts. That's for your spout on the tree.
Oh yeah, I hear it.
Stick your finger in that one.
All right.
That's amazing.
I got a lot.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
got
wow.
a big draw on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know my problem definitely ain't on this side here. Cause them leaks, even though I'm off 3 pound. If I was off 3 pound, it definitely wouldn't have vacuum leak in it.
On March 11th, 2008, the Frostburg State University students visit the Savage River Lodge. Here, lodge owner Mike Dreibach shows students about ecotourism and the maple sugar industry.
Frostburg is helping us with. So we'll be able to, hopefully, in 2 years, we'll be totally feet higher than in Corriganville, basically. So they get springtime usually about a week and a half or so earlier, and so they should have been tapping 2 weeks ago. Up here, everybody, all the Amish guys, and I learned all my stuff from the Amish guys up here. They're pretty amazing bunch of people. So up here, we had a run last week. It lasted about 3 days, and when I went to Paul's, he actually made 300 gallons in those 3 days, which wasn't too bad for him to get started, get all the bugs out of the system, and then everything shut down. And I didn't tap because it looked like long range weather forecast was going to set it down. And maybe I'm a little bit more high tech than most of the guys, but the old timers know their stuff, because Henry Brenneman said last week, he said the first real tap will be on the 10th or 11th of March. Henry's the old Amish guy, and he's hitting right smack on the nose. And it's like, how you know that, Henry? I don't know. He just knows. Experience. So if I got 500 taps, I can get 125 gallons of maple syrup in a year. And but that's a lot of work if you're using buckets. I mean, it is a lot of bucket work. So that's always the hard thing. So as I find it, I got to do more and more of the work I'm doing. But those Amish guys are pretty amazing. I mean, they're on target. Now, this thing, Mike was here yesterday, just right after I got done tapping.
It's just about 4 inches or so in there.
This is a 125 gallon tank. That's just overnight. So, and it's just starting to run again. As long as the temperature stays down around, 35 to 40, the bacteria don't start to grow, and you got about 24 hours to play with. So what I'm going to do is, I probably have this 125, and I probably up on the hill have 125 right now. So that's 250, and if it stays cold today like it's supposed to, it's not supposed to get real warm up here. Off the mountain, it's supposed to get in the 40s and upper 40s. But this system's pretty simple. I mean, Ohio State University has done more research than everybody in the country, and they put out a Bible on maple syrup, and they've studied it to death basically. But any question you have, they got the answer.
I looked through it a little bit last night. It's pretty thorough.
And they'll tell you about taps are too tight, or maybe it was a cold weather tap coming a couple years ago and it just split it. But I'm not worried about the tree for timber purposes. So you can tap those things forever. I've seen some of those. Looks like somebody has shot it with a shotgun. I mean, they've been tapping those trees for decades, and it doesn't hurt the tree evidently, because the tree just keeps getting bigger. 110. Okay. I'm trying to get this whole group. I want to have 200 in here. Is what I'm really shooting for. I don't think I'm gonna see 200 this year because I'm getting lazy. I might get another 40. I might get to 150 for sure.
These trees in here, sorry.
Probably 50.
50, 70 years old.
Yeah, 50 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these little trees, I mean, that little tree right there, I mean, that tree, when we bought the land, we've owned the land for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really pay attention to the sugars in here then.
Right.
Because I didn't realize it was an opportunity. But there are I had some big ones up on the hill that probably are 70 or 80 years old, maybe 90 years. But in this part of the world, they've cut everything. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just
hard
like
to find.
this whole area when we bought this property, just off of my property line, where all that brush is, that was a clear cut. They had just clear cut the whole thing.
The state had sold all that.
Yeah, the state had sold it all, and the boundary trees that they weren't sure, like there's a great big red oak right there with a whole bunch of gypsy malls on the
Yeah.
side. All those little brown packets,
Yep.
Right.
they're all gypsy malls.
Mm-hmm.
So they've clear cut everything in here. This piece was just private property they didn't get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was a field because the old house was sitting right in here.
Okay.
So this is where the pigs and chickens, and this was really the immediate farmstead.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This whole piece of property, there's 800 acres, and the guy owned it in the Depression, and then what took place was, as he didn't pay his bills, the bank foreclosed on him, and they left him keep 45 acres right here with the road back over to his brother's farm. And he had a bunch of apple trees and pear trees, and he had moonshine stills all through this hollow. I mean, it was a notorious place for making moonshine. But then what happened is, as the Depression got bad, the bank went belly up, and the bank's asset got given to the federal government, and then the federal government gave it back to the state of Maryland in 1951 to be used for parks and recreation. So that's how this 45 acres ended up being an in-holding of private property.
And it's actually removed from the main part of the state forest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state tried to buy it for a long time. My evaporator's not big, but I can tell you what, when we get her cranked up, she'll actually make this place warm and sweet. What I do is I go collect all the sap, and I bring it out back right around here, and I've got 250 gallons of storage back here, which I need more storage. I need to have 500, but the price of stuff is getting so expensive. The other day I was gonna go to bigger tanks. There's little tanks back here. I have a log book, I write all this stuff down. And so those little tanks were like $129 4 years ago. They're now $279 a tank. There's a lot of money. It's really a big investment if you start into it today new. There's also things today that if you set up a sugar camp, you now have, and there's no grandfathering in, like old, dirty old shacks and places. The way that this whole system, if you're wanting to make money at it, it's not to make money. I mean, I probably, at the end of this year, if I make 100 gallons this year, which is what my goal is, I will have all my money back out of the investment. Okay. So it's not something that you want to do if you're trying to make money. The old guys make money on it because they don't have any investment. And they ain't got to upgrade things once in a while. Because when you start, go ahead.
Were you saying that they had like new license?
To do a new sugar camp today, what I was gonna do is build a little building out of logs, and just do a sugar camp, and I called the health department up and said, okay, what do I gotta do? Well, he sent me this manual about that thick, and I said, no, I'm not a McDonald's here, I'm not a food processor. Oh yeah, you are food processing. And in the back of the book, it had a terrorism plan. You had to submit a terrorism plan. And when I saw that, I just went ballistic. So I called the guy up and I said, you know what? I said, this is the most ridiculous damn thing I've ever seen. Well, you want to do maple syrup, you're gonna have to do it that way or you can't do it. I said, no, I'm gonna do it. I said, I've already been doing it. I already got it set up. And I didn't think it was this complicated. Well, you have to have concrete floors. You have to have a hot water sink. You have to have a heat system. You gotta have the right kind of filtration systems and all that kind of stuff. Well, I had all that stuff. I knew how to do it right. But then he finally gave me an okay to do it. He gave me a permit to do it. But his terrorism plan was really the funny thing. You had to have barbed wire fence around there, and all this good stuff. And then you had to submit a plan. And I said, you know what? My terrorism plan is pretty simple where I live. It's called 12-gauge shotgun. And I said, so God help the first terrorism guy who wants to come down that road. What I do is I'll take and run. And if I can, on a good day, if I run 400 gallons, at the end of the day, 450 gallons might give me about 10 gallons of maple syrup. And so by the time I cook it down, what I'll do is I'll put it in these 5 gallons. this one's full, but I'll put it in these 5-gallon containers and close it. This is my finishing pan. So I keep about an inch of water in here and just boil the crap out of it. And then as the density increases, it'll just migrate over to here. And once I've run for about 10 hours, I know that I've got about 10 gallons or 8 gallons worth of stuff. And what I'll do is I'll shut this off, and then I just finish it out here in the finishing pan. And so I'll actually finish it on a gas fire. I'll take this big thing on the bottom, and I'll dump that into there, and I'll finish it to get the right density, so I got perfect density.
When did you initially get into it? Just
Fun.
fun. Just curiosity.
Just fun.
Yeah.
Yep, I mean, it's always been a lot of fun to do it. We got all kind of people wanting to come see maple syrup. This weekend I gotta run, so I have to have sap this weekend. I gotta be throwing steam out here.
People
There's
are
gonna be
coming,
some
yeah.
mad people. But this thing came from Montreal. Canadians know how to do it. And you saw the big one that he had. What did
He's got a wool fire.
He's got a wool fire.
Yeah.
Here and drink a few Coors Lights and wait for the thing to get to the right temperature.
It's sweet.
It is. That's the truth too.
On March 14th, 2008, the Frostburg State University students attend the Maryland Maple Festival, held annually in the Catoctin Mountains at Cunningham Falls State Park, located in Thurmont, Maryland.
And a lot of the legends that we have about how maple syrup was found or invented, or how you found out you could take something from a tree that dripped out of a tree and put it on a pancake, comes from Native American legends. One of my personal favorites is an Iroquois legend about a man named Chief Waxes. And the legend goes like this. One day after a very, very hard day, Chief Waxes came home. He was tired. He had his tomahawk. Tomahawk being a very, very important tool and weapon used all the time. Did he want to lose this tomahawk? No. Would you want to lose it? No, absolutely not. So he took his tomahawk. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you, when you're finished using a tool, you put it away? Yeah. Okay, that's a great thing. Well, Chief Waxes, because this is so important to him, decided that he was going to put it
Montgomery
somewhere
County
safe.
elementary school teacher Angela Pease explains the history of maple syrup production.
So he took the tomahawk, he put it, hopefully better than I did, he put it in a tree and it stuck. Okay, it was safe, it was kept overnight, it was safe, he could find it the next morning, what you want for a tool. Well, the next morning, and it was optimal time for sap flow. What that means is it was a very cold night, it was below freezing. When he got up the next day, it was sunny, warm, above freezing. So you had below freezing night, above freezing day. Took the tomahawk out of the tree, and it just happens that something very fortuitous happened. There was an empty vessel at the base of that hole. Okay. So he takes the tomahawk out of the tree, the temperature warmed up, and the sap dripped into the container. Okay, very important. However, the sap dripping in the container looked very much like this. What's that look like? Water. Carry it around. What's it look like? It looks like water. Okay, so this sap coming out of the tree looked very much like water. There's a good reason it looked like water. It's 98% water. Okay, so it looks very much like water. So his wife, who is also a very, very busy woman, how many of the wives here are very, very busy all the time? Okay, she was a very, very busy woman. Chief Waxes thought he was busy. She was busy too. So she goes to this tree, and right there is a container of water. She doesn't have to go to a stream. She doesn't have to go to a lake. She doesn't have to go to a river. There is a thing of water there. She takes it back. Anybody know what the Native Americans used the water for? Besides drinking, what else? Cooking. Okay, so she takes this back and she cooks her meat in it for the day. Maybe she had a nice slice of venison, maybe she had some bear meat, whatever it was. She put it in that water she got from underneath that tree, and they did a process called stone boiling. So they take hot stones from the fire, place it in the water. When there's a cool, take them out, place hot stones in the water. And by that process, the water would boil and cook the meat. Well, she put these stones in that water. Excuse me. Put the stones in that water. Started the water boiling, and something miraculous happened. As she did this, the water got thicker and darker and sweeter. So she did this, and when they took that meat out to eat that night, it was sweet. It tasted very good. Personally, I like a nice beef brisket with maple syrup on. So, but she took this out, she cooked it in there, it was very sweet. There you go, you got maple syrup, or maple product being made. And the Native Americans often use this maple product to cook their meat in, so they cook meat in it. They also made 3 different kinds of sugar. They made a sugar that's very much like brown sugar. They also made a cake sugar that they could keep all year and use later, break up and shave off and use later. They also made a wax sugar, which they would take the granulated sugar, and the sugar would start to crystallize, pour it on the snow and made like a taffy-like substance. They called wax sugar, we call sugar on the snow today. So they made these different sugars to use. As early as the early 1600s. Well, now we have the colonists come over. And as the colonists come over, they picked up this process, and they also started making sugar. Now, the early colonists did not syrup. They did. They made the sugar. Syrup was too hard to find a place to keep a lot of syrup for a very long time. So they would make these sugar cakes. They traded them. They would actually, some families would make like 1,000 extra pounds and trade the store for other products. So it was a pretty big thing. Now, during colonial days, there was a very important reason why the colonists made maple sugar. Anybody have any idea what that might be? How many of you are looking forward to April 15th? Okay, why did the colonists want to make their own sugar? Tax. There was a tax. There was a tax on cane sugar. As a matter of fact, up into the mid-1850s, cane sugar was twice as much as maple sugar. You could buy it because of the tax. So early colonists wanted to make their own sugar. So they got this process and they made sugar with it. Now they made a couple improvements over time. First of all, the Native Americans would take a tomahawk or take some kind of tool and slash the tree. Well, if you take something and you slash a tree, what's eventually going to happen to the tree? It's going to die, right? So the colonists thought, well, we're going to do this for a long time. We want to save the trees a little bit. So we're going to drill a hole. And you drill a hole in a tree, it helps the tree can heal. It kind of gets rid of that problem. But you need some way to direct the sap to a container. So they started making something called a spill or a spile for this sap to come out of. The early spiles look something like this. Okay, this is a piece of staghorn sumac, and you can see right here what it looks like. Now this should not be confused with the poisonous sumac, which you don't want to use. But this is staghorn sumac. You can see the berries on. You can also see a kind of velvet on it here. So this is what they would use. And the reason they would use something like this is because that center, that pith, is very soft. And that made it possible to take a piece, which they have carved here, take a poker from a fire, and push it through that center section, and that mentioned it. But push that center section right out, and make this hollow inside. Well, now you have a hollow tube, you stick it in a tree, the sap comes out, and you can direct the sap where you want it to go. Native Americans used a hollowed out log, takes a little while to make. Colonists made something that looked much like this, okay, called a keeler. Any idea who in colonial times the name of the occupation that made keelers? A cooper. I heard different over here somewhere. It was a cooper. So a cooper would make these buckets. Now, if you have anything outside made of wood, you can answer this question. What happens to untreated wood when it's outside, it gets wet and it dries, gets wet and it dries, it freezes and thaws? What eventually happens to it? It's going to maybe rot, yes, but before it rots, it's going to crack and you're going to have leaks. Okay? So these were great for the first year. You could get a lot of sap in this and keep it for a long time. Eventually, it's going to leak. Well, somebody had a wonderful idea, and they did what to the inside of this bucket? They painted it. Well, you don't have leaks anymore, right? You got a bigger problem. Unfortunately, at that time, they didn't realize there was a problem. What did they put in colonial paint?
Lead.
Lead. Okay. So now you're taking something made out of lead, you're putting sap in it, and you're using it for food. Probably not a good idea. Okay. But remember, at this time, did not realize lead was bad for you, so they did it. Eventually, because the wooden buckets would still have problems, they came up with metal buckets. So eventually you had metal buckets, okay? This would last for a very, very long time. Good solution. Only problem is you still have a seam in it. You use solder for the seam. What's in solder? Lead. Okay? Or at least an early solder. So now you still have lead inside the bucket. Still didn't realize there was a problem, but this still worked a little bit better than the wooden buckets. Eventually went to a system of a rolled metal bucket. No longer have any seams in it, no solder. We're getting away from lead poisoning now, good thing. Okay, rolled metal buckets. All right, this is a very good solution. It's pretty lightweight until you put sap in it. Not a bad solution. But let's say you're a family producing syrup, you've got 2 or 3 of these buckets. Is it hard to store 2 or 3 buckets for the winter time or for the summertime? How many of you can find a place for 2 or 3 buckets? I mean, I have a little house and I can find room for 2 buckets. Okay? So it's not a big problem. Let's say you're a maple syrup producer now and you have 300 buckets. Is storage going to be a problem? Okay, all of a sudden now you've got to have quite a bit of room to store these things. Our next thing is something that looks like this. Looks like a bladder bag, right? Okay. Works very much like your bladder does. When liquid fills in it, it expands. Okay? But when the liquid is gone from it, it rolls up. Can you store 300 of these? I can store 300 of these in my house. Okay, so storage is no longer an issue. Well, at the very beginning of this, I mentioned briefly that there were a couple legends. I only told you one, but I said there were a couple legends about how maple syrup was invented. Well, another legend is that squirrels in the trees, instead of eating other trees that they're normally in, like oak trees where the nuts are, all of a sudden people start seeing them in maple trees, chewing on the branches. Now, what would possess a squirrel to chew on a branch?
Water.
And this is what people started to look at, chewing on the branches, getting that sweet sap out. If you don't eat a lot of sugar and you taste the maple syrup sap, it will have a sweet taste to it. If you don't eat a candy bar and a bottle of soda for breakfast, you might be able to taste the sweetness. Okay? But a lot of us eat a lot of sugar, a lot of sweet things, and it's difficult to taste like water. Squirrels, on the other hand, is very sweet to them. So you have these plastic bags hanging now, and we've got another problem. What do you think might have done that? Okay, maybe a squirrel, maybe another animal, but you still have a problem with things chewing through them. If they're chewing a branch to get the sap out, do you think they're going to chew on a plastic bag? Sure. Okay, so still a little bit of a problem. Now, before I get to the last thing, I want you to imagine something here. Imagine that you are going out to collect this sap, and you have a bunch of these bladder bags hung up, maybe 50 bags. Okay, you're excited. You hang them from the spout. You're ready to go collect the maple sap, ready to go collect the maple sap, and that night it snows a foot. Okay, now maple sap will spoil if it's out there too long. It has sugar in it, it will spoil. It's about 2% sugar, 98% water, and that's an average tree. So you got to go collect it eventually. You got a foot of snow on the ground, and you got to trek through a foot of snow to collect 50 bags full of sap. Is that going to take a long time? Yes, it is. Okay, it's a lot of effort. It will take some time. Sugar producers, when they're collecting sap from the sap run, will work 24 hours and then have days off and the sap stop flowing. So if you're going to get this is a lot of work, a lot of effort. So they came up with something ingenious. It's a pipeline. And this will run from tree to tree and directly into the sugar house. So now instead of going out to collect that sap and dredging it through snow and ice and rain and all kinds of conditions, now you're getting sap right through this pipeline into the sugar house. Little effort. You still got to go check these because look at this. Any idea what might have done that? Okay, back to our squirrels. So that's still definitely a possibility. So we still got some animal damage there, but still much less work because now you're just repairing this. You're not dragging through the woods with a bucket full of sap. So a little bit less effort, but still got to check on them. This could be a couple days loss of sap to a producer. Okay, so you still got to check on these, but much, much easier. Now, I said about how the Native Americans and the colonists usually made sugar, not a lot of syrup. Well, by about 1890, the tax on cane sugar was reduced. So in 1890, no longer any tax on cane sugar. And it became much less expensive than maple sugar. So the maple sugar production went down drastically. 1864 was our biggest year for syrup and sugar combined ever in the United States. In about 1890, we no longer produced much sugar anymore. It was mostly syrup by this time. So about 1890 is when we started producing the syrup that we eat today. All right, we talked a lot about the collection. What do we need to know about next? We've got a lot of sap. It's going to spoil if we keep it too long. Now what? We're going to drink the sap. What do we got to do next? How to boil it. Oh, okay, the consequence of you change what the line's made of. Absolutely. Let me give you a clue. I said 2% sugar for the sap coming out of the tree. Well, when we're finished, it's got to be about 66% sugar. So we're going from 2% to 66%. What do we got to do to get that much sugar in it? Get rid of the water in it. Okay? How do you get rid of the water in something? You boil it. Okay, and that's what we're doing here, you see. So now we got a bunch of sap from the tree. We're boiling it down. This will take about 6 or 7 hours to boil. This will be done about 2 to 2:30, what we have in here. So it takes a while to do. We got to get it 66% sugar, and that's our goal. So my next thing to ask you is, how do we know when it's done? How many of you have ever made candy or icing or something like that? You made something like that. Okay, how do you know when that candy or icing is done? Hard. I heard over here a thermometer. Okay, you can start with the thermometer then. I got here a thermometer. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not so good with numbers. I like English, I like words. Okay? This thermometer was designed for me. Now, I know that water boils at what temperature of Fahrenheit? 212. Excellent. This is a great crowd today. So 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Syrup boils at about 219 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, you can try to remember that, or you can get a great thermometer like I have, and instead of 212, what does it say there? It says syrup. So when you're ready for syrup, you wait till the reading goes up to where it says syrup. Okay, very, very easy to remember. And it gets better than that, because if you're making maple butter, it's got to be a little bit hotter. And for it to be maple butter, it's got to say what in the thermometer? Butter. Butter. You guys didn't even see it and you knew. Okay, fantastic. So this is our thermometer. When it reads what I wanted to say in words, that's when it's done. Another way you can tell is by the sugar concentration. I said 66%. Well, can you taste something to see the 66% sugar? That's hard to do. So I got a very, very scientific tool here called a hydrometer. And this hydrometer is very, very scientific, because if I put it in here, got some sap out of there, because it's mostly still sap, it's not even close to syrup, and I put this bobber in here, it's going to bob when it's syrup at 66%. So I can actually check the density of the sugar. It's a hydrometer, so a very scientific way of testing. We don't use this. We don't use a thermometer. We use a better way. And this is actually, I've made icing before. Same way I test my icing. You put some sugar in the pan, you put some corn syrup, you put some water, you stir it, you turn the spoon, and you wait for what to appear.
Crystal.
Anybody know? You wait for kind of a thread to come down. Okay? And this is very, very, very similar. If this was getting close, about 2:30 today, if I put this in here, and I turn it upside down like this, hopefully what I would see along this ladle is beads forming. And as those beads form, it forms something called a crystalline curtain. And that's another way to know that this is now syrup. Okay? So ladder sap, we boil it down, we put it in a bottle. Now I've got a consumer quiz for you. Okay, my first question. In the whole world, what is the #1 syrup producer? And it's not Vermont. They'd like to think so, but it's not.
Quebec.
It is Canada. Canada. I'm not sure if it's Quebec or not. I'm not sure which part of Canada. But it is Canada. As a matter of fact, in the mid-1950s or 1960s, they put what on their flag? A maple leaf. Okay, so they're very, very proud of their maple trees and their maple syrup. So there's a leaf on their flag. Now, in the United States, what's the #1 producer?
Vermont.
Well, you got the right area, but it's Vermont. So it's Vermont. Now, I know that Vermont is also very proud of the syrup in many ways, but one way that everyone knows they're proud is they put it on their license plate. might be on the license plate, I'm not sure. But it's definitely on the quarter. Okay, so it's on the back of the quarter. It's a man with a maple syrup bucket. So it's on the back of the quarter. Another way I know Vermont is very, very proud is because when we do grading in the United States for maple syrup, most people call this very first bottle here light fancy. Grade light fancy. Grade A light amber. Vermont calls it Vermont fancy. Okay, so they actually have their own grading system. But this is Vermont fancy. As you go down the bottles here, the lighter the syrup, general rule is the less maple flavor it has. Lighter in flavor. And some people ask, is this better, is this better? Generally, people use this to make things candy. This one's generally your table syrup, amber. Grade A dark amber people also eat, but these two they usually use in candies and making other things. And a lot of people say, well, which one's best? Which one would you eat? Well, it's like me asking you what's better, red wine or white wine. Because they're very different tastes, and it all really depends on what flavor you like. This one has more maple flavor than this one does. Okay. Now, this here, when I was talking about boiling, I should have showed you this. But we started with this, looks mostly like water. We went to this after 3 hours of boiling, looks a lot like my iced tea. This one here, I know him over here likes this. How many of you like tea? Anybody here drink Southern Brew tea? Well, that's what it reminds me of here. That's about 5 hours of boiling. Okay. That grade is grade C. Now, I was up here listening to the gentleman last week, and he called this not grade C, but he called it Pennzoil. Okay. This is actually syrup that we made here last week, so it comes from the batch method here. This stuff all comes from a producer. So if you put this in the evaporator, you can get something that looks like this. We will probably never get something that looks like this here. Why would our syrup be darker in color? Any ideas why it might be a little bit darker? You'll see him right here. Yes. Okay, we can. Okay, very good. From the fire, from this method that we're using. First of all, it's hard to control an open flame, much harder than an evaporator. So it's harder to control this, and these will change the quality. It tastes good still, but it is going to be much darker in color. Okay, and last but not least, I will tell you in the early 1900s, the USDA made it illegal if you say 100% maple sugar to put cane sugar in it or anything else. So if it says 100% maple sugar, it is 100% maple. Okay. Now, when you go to a grocery store and you buy maple syrup, I have 2 bottles here. This first one here is Log Cabin, Country Kitchen. If it comes from a country, obviously it's good stuff, right? Okay, so Log Cabin Country Kitchen. As a matter of fact, they put this nice text feature down here that says, now more maple flavor. But notice that the flavor is smaller than the maple word. Okay, now more maple flavor. Anybody have a guess how much maple syrup is in this bottle? Zero. It is 0. There's none. How many of you know that when you look at a bottle, look at the ingredients, what is listed first is what is most in that, whatever it is. Okay, any idea what the first ingredient in this is?
Corn syrup.
Corn syrup. Any idea what the second ingredient is? High fructose corn syrup. Okay, so this definitely has lots of corn syrup in it. Our last bottle here, now we have cane and maple syrup. Cane and maple syrup. Cane is listed first. Which is there more of? Cane. Okay, there's more cane syrup in here. Now, anybody have a guess how much maple syrup is in this bottle? This is actually one of the highest in the market that's not 100%. A lot of them have 2 to 5%. This one actually has 15. So this is one of the highest on the market as far as not pure maple syrup. You can find pure maple syrup in the store. It is expensive, but you are going from about 40 gallons of sap to about a gallon of syrup when you boil it. So it's a long process. If I fill this up with sap, that bucket there, this is how much syrup I'm going to get. Okay, so it is a very, very, very long process. So it is expensive, about $50 for a gallon. Okay, so the maple syrup is fairly expensive. Most of us don't buy a gallon at a time, but it is fairly expensive. One final thing, if I have anybody in the audience that is sensitive to sugar, remember if you get any of the maple stuff, you're eating 66% sugar. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And I see somebody up there going, woohoo! Alright, so remember, and maybe parents want to keep that in mind too for the youngsters.
It's interesting that in the latter 90s, going into very early 2000, we were having a stock market bubble that was exacerbated by the internet bubble. And the stock market peaked January, February, March of 2000, which, as a corollary, dollar flow peaked at the same time, as is always true with stock market peaks and loose money. And when that peak occurred, then we had a short plateau and then a decline that was a precipice of decline in the stock market. The Dow Jones went down 30-some to 40%. The NASDAQ 100 actually fell more than close to 90%. Money dried up. Corporations were laying off. The corporations that weren't laying off were cutting back, or at least not hiring. And when those situations keep repeating in America time and again, as it filters down through the money classes of America, the lower middle class has to become more reliant, as they have done time and again in America. So perhaps the sugar people in America went back to one of their old crafts that got tiresome and didn't pay well recently, but their opportunities were diminished from 2000 to 2002, so they thought, hey, let's go back and tap those trees and get at least a few dollars to get us through the winter. And perhaps that's why the dollar peaked around 2000, flattened, turned down for a couple of years, and then of course the economy turns around, and if sugar syrup isn't needed anymore quite as much as an opportunity to make money, perhaps your production fell. Who knows?